2, 1. Yeah.
No worries, no worries.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining in. So our session today, we are going to be powering up with Power Automate, how you can be able to use Power Automate to basically automate all process. All the repetitive tasks that you have been having, you can easily automate them with Power Automate. So the good thing about Power Automate is you don't need to you don't need to know any code to be able to use it. So it's a low code platform. So we have Somet who will be taking us through the session. One thing I need to add is we have lots of swags available for everyone. So the first thing you need to do is tweet as much as you can using the hashtag MSCC2020. The second thing is I'll be sending a feedback form to the chat afterwards. So in case you have any feedback that you want to give us, fill the feedback form. One good thing about it is we will be giving one of you a LinkedIn learning voucher for 1 year. So one of you will be able to walk away with a LinkedIn learning voucher just by filling the form. So ensure you fill the feedback form, and yeah, so right over to Somet.
Hi everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to this session today. Today we're going to be talking about Power Up with Power Automate. My name is Somet Kipchilat. I'm a Senior Business Development Manager at Microsoft. That just simply means I'm responsible for our startup program across the continent. So today I'm going to talk to you about some of the coolest things that, are part of the Power platform. So let me start off. I'm assuming you can now see my screen, hopefully. So the idea of the Power Platform was essentially looking at, how do we empower businesses to automate the things that they work with every day, the different processes that they have every day. And the idea is to let them take care of what's important and sort of automate the rest. Now, I know in your different capacities, you've come across situations where there are different services or different things that you keep on doing every time, and they're very repetitive and you'd love to automate them. Or, sometimes automating simple processes might be a nightmare of learning what one API does versus what the other does and trying to write code to link that up. And what the beauty of the Power Platform allows you to do is sort of automate that process using Power Automate. Now, Power Automate is part of the larger Power Platform, that sits within Office 365 and has 4 different applications. There's Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. Now, these do quite a number of very interesting things, but we all consider them low-code or no-code environments. That's literally essentially help, what we call citizen developers or lazy developers like me to write amazing stuff without writing code. So part of what the Power Platform has some extra capabilities, something called the Common Data Service, an AI builder, and data connectors. And I'll talk more about what those do. But let's focus today on Power Automate. Essentially, as I said before, Power Automate enables you to automate at scale. So looking at how do you automate processes that span across different organizations in a way that is seamless, but also enables you to understand what's going on, how data moves around, but do it in a way that is secure, as it talks to the second point. This is essentially looking at, how do you make sure that somebody doesn't automate a process that keeps on piping data out of a company? So that way companies have confidence that their data is secure. The third piece is looking at how do you accelerate productivity. One of the things that we've done with Power Automate is sort of bring automation down to the end user. So automation doesn't have to be this thing that you request IT or your developer to do, but it's something that you can do by yourself. But also infusing the power of AI that's inbuilt into that. And as I said earlier, we look at supporting different organizations across different places. So whether you're a citizen developer, you're a pro developer, or an IT pro. That's some of the things that what Power Automate enables you to do. One of the interesting things, if you look about Power Automate, is it talks to the different parts of Office that we have. So whether you're extending some services out of Office 365 or Dynamics 365, whether you want to adopt legacy applications, whether you want to build solutions like approving things like leave, you can simply do that, or build sort of more concrete business processes and using technology to digitize those. Power Automate is sort of the place to go, and I'll talk about what that enables. But just to give you an idea what Power Automate is you have the Power Automate workflow and business process engine that sits at the top, and this is where you come in and design your different workflows, your logic, and all that. And then what sits beneath that is what's called a common data service. Bethany, can you guys hear me, or is my connection poor?
Yeah,
just want to make sure that. All right, wonderful. So let's continue. So the second piece is a common data service. Essentially, what the common data service is a service that was built on top of what's called a common data model. And the idea is we looked at how do we streamline entities of data that sit within your organization. So when we say we refer to a customer in one table, we actually mean a customer across all your applications. So essentially making data entities common across your entire application. And this becomes important, and I'll show you why it's really cool. But the third piece is, if we're automating, then definitely you're working with different applications. So you might want to pipe data from Excel to to your storage. You want to take a picture from Instagram and store it in your storage. So we have over 350 connectors that are available to different developers to build really cool, interesting things. So let me deep dive into Power Automate, and I'll go into demo in a few minutes. But I think I've talked about all these automation engines all sitting in one place. The idea of what Flow works on, and I'll go into a demo, the idea it works based on what's called triggers, actions, and conditional logic. So think of Flow as if you've used any of the other automation tools like IFTT, or if you remember in your classes of, I think it was data structures and algorithms, when you're talking about if then else, it works on the same way. If becoming your trigger, else becoming your action. So you take one service and look for triggers, and once that trigger is done, you then perform a specific action. Or you could trigger something, go through a conditional logic, and then perform an action. That is the basic blocks of building a Power Automate. Now, the reason you see me calling it a flow is because Power Automate used to be called Microsoft Flows. So you'll hear me interchange it a bit. But that's the whole idea of Power Flow. It is that simple. It's as simple as if then else. If you're paying attention in class and in uni, then that becomes interesting. So triggers work on very interesting models. You can create triggers that are manually triggered, and so you could say, and this is where now extending what the Power Automate can do becomes interesting. You can put an IoT device and say, when I press this button, trigger this action. Or you could use button, or whatever it is that you want to manually trigger. So you can use manual triggers. You can create triggers that are based on a schedule. So you can say, run this flow every morning. So if it's a repetitive process that you do every day, you can actually use Power Automate to do that every morning. So if you say every morning, take all my Instagram pictures and dump them in storage, or every morning do XYZ. I think I have a flow that copies tasks from one system to the other, and so that I can see them where I like them. Or you can run triggers based on an event that happens in any cloud service or on an on-premise service. And there's actually more you can do on even a legacy system, and I'll talk about that. Now, there are different triggers that you can use. You can create your own triggers, but you can use those that exist today. So whether it's triggers from Gmail, from Microsoft Teams, from your calendar, from OneNote, from your storage, you can use as many triggers as you want, and there's hundreds of them on Power Automate. these triggers also have actions. Now, these actions could be different. You could say, when this trigger happens, go create a record on an Excel sheet on a row, or when this trigger happens, go delete this row on an Excel file. And those are sort of the actions there. So every connector, and I'll talk about what connectors are. Every connector has triggers and flows, and then there are conditions, and I'll sort of go deep into that. Now, conditions could be, a logic that you say whenever this happens, check for certain condition and then perform a specific action, whether the condition is true or false. And essentially, those are what are conditional actions. Now, before I go into too many details, let me switch over to my demo environment. And just to give you guys an idea of what Power Automate is, if you could just give me 1 minute. So this is Power Automate. So if you just go to Power Automate online, you should be able to find it if you have an Office 365 subscription. So there are different things you will see right off the bat. There are different templates that you can use if you don't know how to start. There's a bunch of templates out there, so whether you want to create, and we keep on adding them, really cool ones every other day. So I can create a request for manager approval when a selected item happens. I can create a quick note for an important email, or I can get daily reminders sent to me. So I can do really cool things. So whether they're email based or approval based. Now there are popular services that you can use this for. And it's as simple as going to creating a flow, and sorry for my internet's a bit messy, but I just want to give you an idea of what these flows actually enable you to do. So let me actually pop up a flow that I did, so that you guys have an idea, just so we save on time. So this is my leave request manager flow, and just ignore this error here, we'll fix it as we go. And the idea is I wanted to capture leave requests for my said organization. And essentially I put out a form that has inputs, and you say, go put in the reason why you go on leave. And just to give you an idea what that form looks like, this is what the form looks like. It's a simple form that says, give your reason, give a start date, end date, and what kind of leave. Now, there are very reasons why you don't see other details or fields here, and I'll show you why that's interesting. Why I haven't captured who is requesting, or who their manager is, or who's approving. I'll show you why the cool things you can do with Power Automate. Now, this logic essentially says, when this is my trigger, and the trigger says whenever a new response is submitted, which form am I, because I could have multiple forms, so I can go pick the one I have, which is a leave request. Now, for every one of these responses, I want you to perform the following actions. Now, these are one of those conditional logics that applies to every logic. So the first one is get the response details from Microsoft Forms. And this forms could be even Google Forms if you want. It could be any other form. It could be a SharePoint list. It could be literally anything. Your trigger could be anything. In this case, I chose to use Forms. Now I say, hey, get this request details and create that item on a SharePoint, because I need to create a list somewhere where a HR person can go view this details. I don't want them going to see this form, because what I want to do with this form is embed it in a SharePoint site. If you don't know what SharePoint site is, just Google Microsoft SharePoint and you'll see it. Essentially, it's just a collection of sites. You can create internal sites for a company, and you can store a lot of data in there. So I create this item on my SharePoint on a list. So SharePoint is based on something called lists and libraries, and so I created a SharePoint list that stores this. So think of the list like an Excel form. So in this list that sits within this site on SharePoint, my HR site, on a list called time off, I create the title, which I pre-fill it with the reason. So I can come here and say the title of my request is the reason, and you can dynamically now add information that you collected from your site. And that's the beauty of automating this process. It's not being manually done. It's being done every time somebody submits a new request. And you notice I pre-filled a reason, a start date, an end date, and the type of leave. Now, I'll not fill this in, and I'll show you why I'm not filling that in. Now, once I create the item, I want to go and understand who is this person that submitted this request. And I go create, and I'll just show you how I created this. I can create an action, and this action says go find, because all this sits within the Office 365 environment, I don't need to go collect the information of this person. I can collect it, I can pick it up from the backend. So I look for the connector for Office 365, and I click on that, and then I can say my trigger or my action in this case is get this person's profile. Now notice I have both triggers and actions. So if I want to initiate a trigger here, I could, but in this case, I'm doing an action. An action is get this person's profile, and I can create more, I can do more actions. I can get this person's direct reports, and this is information that's stored within Office 365, or for the more dev people within your Active Directory. I can get information like trending documents that they work on, their profile picture, their user profile. I can search for people, so I can find really interesting things. But in this case, I've already put this up, so get my profile. And then the other thing I want to do is also get who is this person's manager. Now, for this particular leave request, I don't want to give people the flexibility to choose who approves their leave. I want it automatically to pick who their manager is. Now, Office 365 is a really cool way of tracking, who's manager, so that way you can create a very interesting hierarchy of people. So I can actually put the company hierarchy on a digital platform and continually reuse that across multiple applications. So if the system already knows who this person's manager is, all I'm saying is get this person's manager, and based on what their user profile is. Now, this is drag and drop for all you devs out there who love writing code. This spits out an entire JSON file that you can go edit and customize and write code if you want. But for me, lazy developers like me, or citizen developers who don't want to go into code, or an end user, here's a good way of building this. And notice I'm not writing a single line of code anywhere. Now, let's move on. The second step is an approval. We want to create an approval that says, here's a request, somebody go approve it. And I've created an approval type that says, whoever's the first to respond. I can send this approval to a distribution group or multiple people and say everyone must approve, or who's the first one to approve. In this case, I just chose whoever's the first to approve, which will probably be the manager. And you can create that in case your manager's away and you want your manager's manager to approve. You can create that logic here, and it's quite simple to do. But I simply filled in and send the titles is leave request for whoever this display name is, the person who submitted the request, and then assign it automatically to, notice this says body get manager. It automatically assigns this to the manager, and the request goes as an email saying, hey, this person has requested for time off for this kind of leave from X date to X date. Comments below, and then kindly approve this request. Now, this flow will automatically create an email that has a button, and it has something called an actionable email, an email that you can actually click approve or deny, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then I link this request back to my SharePoint list, just for the manager wants to get more detail on what this request is, they can go do that. And then I run a condition and say, if this approval's outcome is approve or response is approved, then go, and if the condition is yes, I want to go send an email to this person saying your request has been approved. I want to block their calendar for the period that they requested their time off, and I want to put this. Let me just quickly fix this. Where's the start date? Somewhere down here, and notice it gives me a bunch of options, but I'm going to pick that date and the end date. And notice I'm doing this completely dynamically, and I get inputs from different places, so whether it's from SharePoint or from the system. Let me just change this. Request approved by your manager. Perfect. And this flow goes and blocks someone's calendar and says, puts the time off. And I want to go back to that SharePoint list and say, hey, this list was actually approved. So I go change the status value. Now my SharePoint list looks something very interesting. It's a very simple list. Let me bring it up here. It's just a list that collects your reason, your start date, end date, leave type, status, and who the approver is. And in this other form, in my flow, what I want to capture is if the status was approved. So I'm updating the same SharePoint item. And it's as simple as coming here, add an action, and just searching for SharePoint, and putting in my application and choose update. And that's what I've put up here. And then I just went ahead and said, hey, if they use Kaizala, also send them a text message that says they've been approved. If no, same thing. Your request was denied, and I want to say your request for, and then let's just do time off so that don't complicate it, has been approved by your manager. Plus, remember when this approval is done, the manager gets to put in their comments, and I capture those comments and says, here are the comments that your manager put in place and why they denied it. And I'm going to approve the update the same SharePoint list with that particular record saying that this was declined and this is the person who approved, and send a text message. Now I can go ham and add other interesting things here. Let's just say I want to put out a tweet that says this person, for whatever reason, I want to post a tweet that says this person is going on leave. Now, the beauty about this is I don't have to go and understand what the Twitter API looks like. I just say Twitter, use the default application, hit sign in with my Twitter account or whatever Twitter account that I have, and boom, it's able to pick that up, figure out all the authentications. Yeah, let's not use my Twitter. Let's not do that. But essentially, it's able to go authenticate me in there, automatically figure out the authentications and handle that for me. So I never need to know what the hell is going on in the back. And I can go and test this flow and say, hey, it already tells me there's still an issue. Something is not present. So I haven't put in something. Ooh, okay, so let's remove this. It's the problem with live demos. So oops, something is here. So let me just remove this there. And I fix that error. Boom. So let's test this out. So I just come here, click test. I can use data that I had before to submit this, and it will go and run a test. So if I was doing tests, I don't have to go fill in the form again. I can use the form. Now, something's going, it should be running a test right now. And the beauty about it, it'll show me how this flow is running. And it tracks everything, and clearly it says, oh, Somet, your flow has failed. And I can go into this particular flow and say, okay, let's see what went wrong. I got the response detail, it created the item, found the manager, but something happened when this approval happened. It says unable to process language by start approval. Okay, so there's something I'm missing here, so I'll fix this later because of time. But you can go in and debug every aspect of that flow and figure out what went wrong, what ran, what did not run, and that's the beauty of flows. And it'll orchestrate all manner of things for you. And you can build really, really cool flows. So let me give you an example of some of the ones I've built. These my leave request manager. I wanted to create a form where every time we have a new hire in this organization and someone needs to create an email, you know, they could fill in a form, and at the back, the system will go create a user account on Office 365, send an email saying, here's your account details, and voila. So you can create those interesting flows. You can create team flows that belong to different organizations. I created this one that says, you know, every time somebody joins a group, and you've probably seen this on Telegram, where someone joins a group, there's a bot that says welcome to the group, and creates really cool ones. This one syncs messages from Office 365 Admin Center to my planner to tell me, hey, you need to do all these things, and this one runs on a schedule. So this runs every morning and syncs up to applications. And you can see here, I can go into the specific one that run every day, and go figure out what exactly happened, what did it do, here's the recurrence, and they could be time-based, frequency, and I can go into the details, and that's the beauty about flow. And you can do quite a lot of interesting things about flow. using Power Automate. Now, these UI flows is something very interesting that I'll talk about as we go on. I hope I have not confused everyone, but let's get back to the slides. The idea, and I think I've talked about, automated testing and how that is cool, and you can really build more complex scenarios. As you can see, what's on the screen here is a bit more complex. You can use there's hundreds of templates out of the box that you can use just for you to learn and understand how these things work. And some of the beauties about once you build these connectors is you can actually sell them as solutions. So if you come and see here on my screen, you have the templates that I was talking about, you have the connectors, and you can build custom connectors from people. And I'll highlight one of the companies here in Kenya that has built a custom connector. If I come here, I'm sure most of you have interacted with Africa's Talking. They built a really cool connector that I can use to send out SMSs. Africa's Talking, it should be somewhere in there. And here you go. So if I wanted to send an SMS using Africa's Talking APIs, I could actually do that. And so here, those are the cool things about it. You can actually go create your own connectors if you have a service or an app that you offer out there. This is a good way of reaching millions and millions of customers. Now you can store data, and I talked earlier about what the common data services and common data model. So let's say in my flow, I wanted to pick data that I'm storing somewhere, or I want to create some sort of a database to work off of. I could use a common data model, and it allows you to work with interesting data points. I can use the AI builder to build in AI capabilities into my workflow, but I can also publish whatever leave application that I've built out there and actually sell it as a solution, and I can go publish it on the Azure Marketplace. And those are some of the cool things that the Power Platform can do. And I think I've gone way ahead of myself and way ahead of my slides, so I'm just going to power through the slides. As I said, there's 3 basic blocks: triggers, actions, and conditional logics. They're very simple. You can track all the errors, you can debug in real time, you can test in real time, and you can use templates. Now, there's a number of interesting things you can do. You can use connectors. Connectors are those services that I talked about. They're what are called first-party connectors, and they're also what are called third-party connectors. And so you can connect from all manner of services. So whether you want to do something within the Microsoft environment, or externally, or if you want to use a HTTP request for all the devs out there, really, and trigger HTTP request and use that as a trigger, you can do that. But there are all these companies that have built these triggers and connectors that really make it very simple for people to build cool, amazing application. As I said before, Africa's Talking has built a cool one. Go have a look at that. I think it's still in preview, so you might not be able to see that, but it's something really cool out of the box. Now, these flows or Power Automate connectors or services span across all the entire Office 365 platform. So whether you're building into SharePoint, whether you're building into the Office suite of applications like Excel, you want to trigger some stuff in Excel. So for those of you who've lived their life on Excel, here's a way to automate those repetitive processes. You want to trigger stuff in Microsoft Teams, or you want to go outside the Microsoft environment and trigger stuff in Salesforce or SAP or Dynamics, or build more complex operational processes. Power Automate enables you to do all that. Now you can leverage some of the inbuilt AI capability and say, I want to build my own business card reader, and then every time, take those contact details and store them as contacts within my either common data model or through them to my phone. So you can really build cool, interesting things for your own personal work environment or for businesses. And that's some of the cool stuff you can do in there. Now, there's a couple of models that are pre-built in there that you can use, or you can create your own, bring in your own custom models that you've built. Now, here's where it gets exciting. Now, we realize there's all these things that you can do and where there's APIs, but realize some companies run off of legacy applications that have no APIs whatsoever. So somebody is running all these old legacy application that sits on a desktop machine. So we built into Power Automate something called, the UI flows. And essentially what it's able to do is to go record a specific step or process on that desktop application and replay that step. So if if somebody I put a contact me page on my website and somebody fills it in, I want this to store this on a legacy application, whether it's a CRM, I can get the UI flow to go record what steps need to happen. And so instead of manually having somebody go read that Excel sheet and then copy and copy paste it into this application, I can get Power Automate to do that. So it's able to interact with applications that have no APIs whatsoever. Now, for all the cool developers, if you want to manage your Power Automate or Flow as an API, you can actually take that and expand it into Azure as an API service. Now, if you look at what Power Automate is, and I'll talk about this later, it's a heavy abstraction of an Azure service called Azure Logic Apps. And so for devs that you want to really get more detail into how this Power Automate works, you can go play around with Logic Apps on Azure. And for those of you who are not code oriented or very low code, stick to Power Automate. But they're one and the same service, and you can do a lot more. And you can extend this data and make it cut across all these applications. So if you want to push data to Power Virtual Agents, Power Virtual Agents enables you to create bots without writing code. So if you want to say, take this interaction from this bot, use Power Automate to automate this process and send an email to someone saying, hey, reach out to this person, you can do that. And you're leveraging on the power of the data connectors, the common data model, and all of this is built on top of Azure. And that's some of the beauties about the the Microsoft environment. You have seamless integration of not only just the flows, but the common data model across all your organizations. So if we refer to a meeting in Office 365, it's the same meeting in Dynamics, in Azure, and in your Power Automate. That's the beauty of the common data model. And I don't want to go detailed into that, but that's what the common data model is. Essentially, it's streamlining the data points across your entire organization. Now, I think I mentioned that Power Automate, is an abstraction of Logic Apps and Azure Functions, and essentially, you can go and use your favorite Visual Studio or PowerShell scripts or the Azure Portal, Resource Manager, and really use Azure Logic Apps and Power Automate to really automate even your dev environment. So if you want to automate something that you do dev-wise and using Power Automate, you can actually do that, or use Azure Logic Apps. And that's the beauty about the Power Automate. So let me stop there, and I think I have said quite a lot today, but that is the beauty of Power Automate, and that's what you can do with Power Automate. So I encourage you, go ye out there and build amazing stuff on Power Apps. Bethany, I know I have rushed through the presentation. I don't know if people have questions.
Yeah, hello, Somet. Thank you so much for this session. Jafflet here. So we have some questions in the chat, and we'll just quickly run through them so we can move over to the next session. So one of the questions is, can we build Facebook using Power Apps? Okay. I'm not sure if this question is explanatory enough.
Can we build Facebook? Why would you want to reinvent something that exists? I think whoever asked the question, please clarify. Maybe you can move to the next question. Let's see.
Okay. Yeah. So the next question here is from, how do I connect to a REST API in my flow?
Oh, that's all right, cool. So remember when I talked about connectors, essentially what connectors allow you to do is to connect between different services. Now, let me share my screen again real quick, and I can show you. Please do let me know once you can see my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
It's visible now.
All right, wonderful. So notice these connectors are of different plugins. These are pre-created, but if I wanted to use a HTTP request, okay, let me go to one of my flows. And apologies, maybe my internet is a bit slow. Let me just pick one of my flows, but you can go pick, trigger your request with the HTTP. So let me start and say, let's create a new flow, and I'll call this flow REST API. And I want to, let me skip this part, but I can trigger this using HTTP. So whether I'm using a REST API, Swagger, webhook, I can actually go do this. Now, you can interact with the APIs just the same way you do, but if you want a bit more level of control over how these triggers work, you can do the same thing on Logic Apps. So Logic Apps gives you a more detailed way of doing that, but that is quite possible as long as you can trigger HTTP request or a REST API. You can actually do that within Power Automate. Any other question?
Yeah, no other question in the chat. But one last thing I would like to ask, this is a personal question. Is it possible to connect Power Automate to Facebook? So for example, I have a Facebook group or a Facebook page. Is it possible to connect Power Automate, what I've built with Power Automate, to Facebook?
Actually, let's try and do that. There's probably somebody who's built a template. Let's see. Let's see, Facebook. It's not on the template, and we can build one. And that's a cool thing about some of these services. If it's not there, you can always build it. So, okay, the template is not there. So let's go trigger, let's create something. So give me an example scenario you want to do with Facebook. You want to take your Facebook posts and post them on Twitter, or what do you want to do? So let's
say, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say, for example, I want posts to be shared regularly, let's say every morning, just telling everybody to stay safe and wear their nose mask, take a hand sanitizer, and wash their hands regularly.
All right, so let's create that. And this is based on a schedule, and we'll say starting today, every morning at 10 a.m., repeat this every day. So that's my first trigger. My trigger is a schedule. Say every morning at 10 a.m. Runs every day, and I want to go post. Let's see, Facebook have a connector here. Here you go, Facebook. And what do I want to do with Facebook? Okay, so it seems Facebook hasn't put any triggers, but let's say this Facebook, we can trigger a HTTP request and say, do something with this HTTP request and action, go trigger this, and I can go write my HTTP request. I think Facebook should have fixed that. Either that or it's my flow that has an issue, but let's use Twitter as an example. Just in place of Facebook, I can go say here the triggers that, because I'm lazy, I don't want to figure out what the code is, but I want to post a tweet and say this is a tweet text, stay safe and sanitize. Well, I'm not posting any media, and I just hit save. And this will run every morning now. Because this runs on a schedule, I wish we didn't run your track so I can show you how to trigger this. Let's see. Okay, it'll actually let me test it. Run the flow. And it failed. I suspect this is an authentication issue. Profile is not valid. Okay, cool. So let's just fix that real quick. Just hit edit there. Come here, add a new connection, add a new connection, sign in. Okay, clearly now I have to sign in to my Twitter account. Oops, something's wrong. Did you guys lose me?
Yes, we did at some point, but you're back now. Hello, Sumit. Okay.
Sorry, guys. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
I clearly did not sacrifice to the demagogues. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can anyone let me know if you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly,
Yes,
Sumit.
yes. Just go on.
Oh, sorry, I think it's on my end. Clearly, I did not sacrifice to the demagogues, but yes, it is possible to connect this.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for that, Sumit. Thank you so much for joining this session. It's been a really, really amazing one. Thanks to everybody who joined. Don't forget the link in the chat to a short survey. Tell us about the session. Tell us what you like to learn next time in subsequent sessions. We'll be having another session with Microsoft's ADC, Africa Development Center, in a few minutes. Get to learn about how the ADC team works, and yeah, you get to participate to part of the ADC. The link is already in the chat, so please be sure to get to that call. We'll be ending this session now. Don't forget to share all of these on social media. Tell a lot of persons about this, and so they too can learn about all of these amazing technologies. Thank you very much, everybody. See you in the next session.